The distress signal, the discovery. The Deep Space Monitoring Station Prometheus hung in the void between Jupiter and Saturn, its massive sensor arrays slowly rotating as they scanned the cosmic darkness. Communications officer Maya Chen sat at her workstation during the graveyard shift, watching endless streams of data flow across her monitors. The night had been quiet, filled only with the usual background radiation and distant pulsar signals that had become as familiar as her own heartbeat. At exactly 3:47 hours, everything changed. A signal cut through the cosmic noise like a knife through silk, different from anything Maya had ever encountered. The transmission was weak but persistent, repeating in patterns that suggested intelligence behind its creation. Maya's training kicked in immediately as she began running the signal through the station's advanced analysis systems. Computer, isolate transmission source, and begin translation protocols. Maya commanded, her fingers dancing across the control panel. The artificial intelligence responded instantly, its processors working to decode what might be humanity's first message from another intelligent species. Commander James Mitchell, the station's commanding officer, was sleeping in his quarters when Maya's urgent call came through the intercom. "Commander, you need to see this immediately. We've got something big." Mitchell had served in space for 15 years, and he had never heard that particular tone of excitement mixed with fear in an officer's voice. Within minutes, Mitchell stood behind Maya's chair, watching the translation algorithms work their magic. Slowly, impossibly, words began to form on the screen. The message was fragmented, but its meaning was clear and terrible. "This is Zephyrian Council. Anyone receiving. Our world's under attack. The Dominion Empire. Millions dying. Peaceful people. Need help. Please respond." Maya turned to look at her commander, her face pale in the glow of the monitors. "Sir, this is definitely not human in origin. The mathematical structures, the way they encode information, it's completely alien. But they're asking for help." Mitchell stared at the transmission data, his mind racing through the implications. Humanity had always wondered if they were alone in the universe, but they had never expected first contact to come in the form of a desperate plea for assistance. The weight of the moments settled on his shoulders like a physical force. The Council assembles. On Earth, the United Defense Council convened an emergency session within hours of receiving the transmission. The circular chamber beneath the Swiss Alps had been built to withstand nuclear war, but today it hosted discussions about something far more momentous. Representatives from every major nation and space colony gathered around the holographic display showing the alien message. Admiral Sarah Torres, the grizzled veteran who commanded Earth's combined space forces, stood at the center of the chamber. Her weathered face showed the strain of 40 years in military service, but her eyes burned with determination. She had fought in the asteroid belt conflicts and the Mars colonial wars, but this was unlike anything she had ever faced. "Ladies and gentlemen," Torres began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber, "we stand at a crossroads in human history. For the first time, we have proof that we are not alone in the universe, and our new neighbors are crying out for help." The debate that followed was intense and emotional. Some council members argued for caution, pointing out that humanity had no idea what they would be facing in alien space. Others worried about the risk to human lives and resources. But as the hours passed, the weight of the Zephyrian plea became impossible to ignore. Dr. Patricia Reeves, the chief cynobiologist who had been hastily summoned from her research station, presented her analysis of the transmission. The linguistic patterns suggest a species that has never known warfare in the way we understand it. Their concept of conflict appears to be fundamentally different from ours. They're not warriors, they're scholars and artists being slaughtered by something they can't comprehend. The transmission continued to repeat throughout the debate, each cycle adding new details about the Zephyrian civilization. They described themselves as a peaceful federation of worlds, dedicated to art, science, and philosophy. They had no military, no weapons beyond mining tools and construction equipment. The Dominion Empire had arrived without warning, demanding submission and beginning systematic destruction when the Zephyrians refused. Decision point. As dawn broke over the Swiss mountains, Admiral Torres made the decision that would define humanity's future among the stars. Standing before the assembled council, she spoke with the authority of someone who had spent her life protecting others. "We have the capability to reach the Zephyrian system," Torres announced. "Our deep space fleet was designed for long-range exploration and colony defense. We can be there in 2 weeks if we push our fastest ships to maximum velocity." Council Chairman Robert Hayes, a former diplomat who had negotiated peace treaties across the solar system, raised the obvious concern. "Admiral, we're talking about committing our forces to a conflict against an unknown enemy. We don't know their technology, their numbers, or their capabilities." Torres nodded grimly. "You're right, Mr. Chairman. We're going in blind. But I've been reading the xenobiological analysis, and I've been listening to those transmissions. The Zephyrians are being systematically exterminated by an empire that seems to enjoy causing suffering. If we don't act, an entire civilization dies." The vote was close, but humanity's better angels won the day. By a margin of 3 votes, the Council authorized the largest military deployment in human history. The mission would be designated Operation Stellar Shield, and Admiral Torres would lead it personally. Mobilization begins. Across human space, the greatest mobilization in history began immediately. Shipyards from Earth to the outer colonies worked around the clock, preparing vessels for humanity's first interstellar war. The pride of Earth's fleet, the battleship Indomitable, underwent rapid modifications to serve as the flagship for the expedition. Captain Rex Sullivan, Torres' most trusted officer, supervised the preparation of the advance fleet. His ship, the heavy cruiser Defiant, would lead the vanguard force that would scout ahead of the main battle group. Sullivan was a veteran of the Titan colonial uprising, known for his tactical brilliance and his ability to inspire his crews in desperate situations. "How many ships can we deploy?" Torres asked during a strategy meeting in the underground command center. 43 combat vessels, Admiral," Sullivan replied, consulting his tactical display. 12 heavy cruisers, 28 destroyers, and 3 battleships including Indomitable. We're also bringing 6 support vessels and 2 hospital ships. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the chief communications specialist, worked feverishly to develop translation protocols that would allow direct communication with the Zephyrians. Her team had been analyzing the alien transmissions for days, building a basic vocabulary that might allow for coordination if they arrived in time. "The Zephyrian language is remarkably complex," Vasquez explained to the senior staff. "They seem to have developed multiple ways of expressing concepts that we consider simple, but I think we can establish basic communication within hours of arrival." The final preparations. As the fleet prepared for departure, the Zephyrian transmissions became increasingly desperate. The aliens reported that 3 of their worlds had already fallen to the Dominion Empire, their populations either enslaved or killed. Only their home world of Zephyria Prime remained free, protected by ancient orbital defense platforms that were rapidly failing. Maya Chen, the communications officer who had first detected the signal, was assigned to the flagship as part of the alien contact team. Standing in the vast hangar bay of Indomitable, she watched the final preparations with a mixture of excitement and terror. "Scared?" asked Sergeant First Class David Park, the leader of the Marine detachment assigned to the ship. Park was a compact, dangerous-looking man who had earned his reputation in the underground wars of Europa. "Terrified," Maya admitted. "We're about to make contact with an alien species while fighting another alien species. This is either the greatest adventure in human history or the biggest mistake we've ever made." Park grinned, checking his rifle one final time. "Maybe both. But that's what makes it interesting." The fleet's departure was broadcast across human space, watched by billions of people who understood they were witnessing history. Admiral Torres stood on the bridge of Indomitable as the ships formed up in perfect formation, their engines glowing like stars against the darkness. All ships. This is Admiral Torres, she announced on the fleet frequency. Today we carry humanity's message to the stars. We go not as conquerors, but as protectors. We go not for glory, but for justice. The Zephyrians have called for help, and we answer that call. The fleet engaged their hyperspace drives in sequence, each ship vanishing into the swirling vortex of faster-than-light travel. Behind them, Earth continued its ancient rotation, but the people knew that everything had changed. Humanity was no longer alone in the universe, and they were racing toward their first test as a galactic civilization. The fleet awakens. Journey into the unknown. The human fleet traveled through hyperspace for 12 days, pushing their engines to the limit in a desperate race against time. Aboard the flagship Indomitable, Admiral Torres maintained constant communication with the Zephyrian homeworld, each transmission painting a darker picture of the situation. Dr. Elena Vasquez had made remarkable progress in establishing communication protocols. Her translation algorithms now allowed for real-time conversation with the Zephyrian leadership, and what she learned filled the entire fleet with determination. Admiral, Vasquez reported during the daily briefing, "I've been speaking directly with Prime Scholar Alara, who seems to be their equivalent of a head of state. The Zephyrians have been a spacefaring civilization for over 1,000 years, but they've never encountered anything like the Dominion Empire." Torres studied the latest tactical reports from the alien world. The Zephyrians had provided detailed information about their attackers, though much of it was difficult to translate due to their lack of military terminology. "What can you tell us about the Dominion forces?" Torres asked. "They appear to be a hierarchical empire built around conquest and domination," Vasquez explained. "The Zephyrians describe them as pain-bringers and joy-stealers. From what I can gather, the Dominion doesn't just conquer worlds, they seem to enjoy causing suffering." Captain Sullivan, monitoring the conversation from his position at the tactical station, frowned at the implications. "Admiral, this sounds like we're dealing with a species that wages war for sport rather than resources." Torres nodded grimly. Throughout human history, they had faced enemies who fought for territory, resources, or ideology. But an enemy that fought purely for the pleasure of causing pain was something entirely different. First contact protocols. Maya Chen worked closely with Dr. Vasquez to establish communication procedures that would allow coordination with any Zephyrian forces they might encounter. The process was complicated by the fact that the Zephyrians had no military structure in the human sense. "They don't have soldiers," Maya explained to the senior staff. "They have guardians who are essentially construction workers and miners who've been given weapons. Their entire defense force consists of people who volunteered to protect their families." Sergeant Park, who had been listening to the briefings, shook his head in amazement. "They're sending farmers and teachers to fight an interstellar empire. No wonder they're getting slaughtered." The human fleet's approach was detected by long-range sensors when they were still 2 days out from the Zephyrian system. The response from the alien world was immediate and emotional. "Unknown vessels, this is Prime Scholar Alara of the Zephyrian Council," came the transmission. "Are you the humans who responded to our call for help?" Admiral Torres stepped forward to the communication console personally. "Prime Scholar Alara, this is Admiral Sarah Torres of the Terran Defense Fleet. We received your distress signal and have come to assist. Please transmit your current tactical situation." The reply came back filled with what could only be described as overwhelming relief. "Admiral Torres, we have been hoping for a miracle. Our world is under siege by the Dominion Empire. We have perhaps hours before our final defenses fail." The Battle of Zephyria Prime. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Zephyrian system to find a scene of devastation. 3 worlds hung dead in space, their surfaces scarred by orbital bombardment. Only Zephyria Prime showed signs of life, but it was surrounded by a massive Dominion fleet. "Count them," Torres ordered from the bridge of Indomitable. 67 vessels, Admiral, reported Lieutenant Commander Sarah Kim, the fleet's intelligence officer. Mixed classes, but they appear to be focused on siege operations rather than fleet combat. Captain Sullivan's voice crackled over the communication system from the Defiant. "Admiral, I'm seeing weapon signatures that don't match anything in our databases. We're going in blind." Torres studied the tactical display, calculating odds and possibilities. The human fleet was outnumbered, but they had one advantage that the Zephyrians lacked. They were born on a world that had tried to kill them every day of their existence. "All ships, this is Admiral Torres," she announced on the fleet frequency. "Execute Formation Omega. We're going to show these Dominion forces what happens when they pick on our friends." The human fleet moved with precision that amazed the watching Zephyrians. The heavy cruisers formed a spearhead formation, with the destroyers spreading out in a wide net to prevent enemy escape. The battleships Indomitable, Sovereign, and Retribution took positions to provide maximum firepower coverage. The Dominion fleet was caught completely off guard. They had been expecting to face the primitive mining ships and construction vessels that the Zephyrians had been using for defense. Instead, they found themselves facing warships designed by a species that had evolved in constant conflict. Deathworlders revealed. The first engagement lasted exactly 7 minutes. The Dominion ships, built for intimidation and siege warfare, were not prepared for the ferocity and precision of human combat tactics. The lead human destroyer, Lightning, engaged 3 Dominion vessels simultaneously and destroyed all 3 with a combination of missile strikes and energy weapons that the aliens had never encountered. Aboard the Dominion command ship, Fleet Commander Vex stared at his tactical displays in disbelief. "What are these creatures?" he demanded of his tactical officer. "Unknown, Commander," came the reply. "But their ships move like nothing we've seen before. They fight like they have no fear of death." Commander Vex was correct in his observation. The human crews had been trained on a world where everything from the weather to the wildlife tried to kill them. They had learned to face danger with determination rather than fear, to find solutions under pressure that other species might consider impossible. Captain Sullivan's Defiant led a charge directly into the heart of the Dominion formation, her weapons blazing as she engaged targets on all sides. The crew worked with mechanical precision, their movements honed by years of training and combat experience. "This is what humans do," Sullivan announced to his crew over the intercom. "We protect those who can't protect themselves. Today we show the galaxy that Earth's children don't back down from bullies." The rescue operation. While the fleet engaged the Dominion forces, specialized teams began rescue operations on Zephyria Prime. The planet's surface was a nightmare of destruction, but the Zephyrians had managed to save millions of their people in underground shelters. Marine Sergeant Park led a team of specialists to the planet's surface, where they made contact with the surviving Zephyrian defenders. The aliens were unlike anything the humans had ever seen. Tall, graceful beings with translucent skin and large, intelligent eyes that seemed to hold the wisdom of centuries. "We are grateful beyond words," said Guardian Thel, the Zephyrian who had been leading the defense of the main city. "But we do not understand why you would risk your lives for strangers." Park looked at the alien warrior, noting the improvised weapons and makeshift armor that showed how desperately they had been fighting. "Because that's what good people do," he said simply. "We help those who need help." The evacuation proceeded rapidly, with human transport ships ferrying Zephyrian civilians to safety, while the fleet continued to engage Dominion forces. Dr. Vasquez worked around the clock to coordinate the rescue, her translation systems allowing for real-time communication between species. Maya Chen found herself serving as a liaison between human and Zephyrian forces, helping to coordinate the defense of the evacuation sites. The experience was unlike anything she had ever imagined, working alongside aliens to save an entire civilization from extinction. Victory and new beginnings. The battle for Zephyria Prime ended with the complete defeat of the Dominion fleet. The alien empire's ships, designed for terrorizing defenseless worlds, were no match for vessels built by a species that had learned warfare through necessity rather than choice. As the last Dominion ship was destroy or flood the system, Admiral Torres stood on the bridge of Indomitable and looked out at the rescued world. The surface of Zephyria Prime was scared, but it was alive. Millions of Zephyrians had been saved, and their civilization would continue. Admiral, Dr. Vasquez reported, Prime Scholar Alara is requesting permission to address the fleet. The Zephyrian leader's image appeared on screens throughout the human fleet. Her graceful form and ancient eyes conveyed a dignity that transcended species barriers. Humans of Terra, Alara began, you have saved not just our lives, but our entire way of existence. We offer you our eternal friendship and alliance. What can we do to repay such a debt? Admiral Torres smiled, thinking of the long journey home and the new era that was beginning for both species. Prime Scholar, you don't owe us anything. Today we learned that we're not alone in the universe. That's payment enough. The human fleet began its journey home, but the galaxy had changed forever. Humanity had announced its presence among the stars, not as conquerors, but as protectors. The Zephyrians would rebuild their worlds, but they would do so with human technology and human friendship. And throughout the galaxy, other species began to hear stories of the Deathworlders who had come from nowhere to save a dying civilization. The Dominion Empire retreated to lick its wounds, but they would remember the lesson they had learned. There were forces in the universe that would not tolerate the strong preying on the weak. The age of human exploration had ended. The age of human protection had begun.